Welcome to the 2021 Wilmington Spring Workshop.
All right. I just want to share some notes from the AMS conference I attended in January. There's a lot of good stuff. Granted, there's about there was thousands and thousands of hours of stuff on there, so I'm definitely not going to cover all of it, and I wasn't able to watch all of it, but I did want to share a few of the key takeaways that I jotted down while attending the conference. And then, of course, I sent out an email that a lot of presentation videos and posters are available on our Google sites that I thought, could be helpful for the staff. So if you want, you can check those out. I tried to sort them by type. So, there's severe, tropical, climate, things like that. So if you're interested in just certain category, uh, it's available. So without further ado, first thing I want to talk about is mentioned a couple of times at the conference. And then there's also a CLC course on it. So I kind of blended the two things, but one thing that came up was dual hazard events, which is tornado and flash floods, called TORF. It's kind of come to light in the past couple of years. I know we had the study. I think we had an interview coming to talk to us about Florence, with particularly in respect to tornado and flash flood warnings. And so I just wanted to bring up a couple of notes. There's a couple of posters at the conference regarding increased rainfall within rotating tropical cyclone bands. So, as you have the rotating cells, it can enhance updraft, which can increase rainfall. And the studies that were presented were from Florence and Imelda. And having this, rotating cells increase rainfall increases your chance of having a tornado warning and a flash flood warning being in effect, for the same area at the same time. So there's a couple big scenarios where TORFs come into play, training supercells, tropical cyclone events, and of course, the latter is where it happens more often for us, is during tropical cyclones. So what's the big problem with TORFs is that there's conflicting messaging. So tornadoes, the call to action is seek shelter in the lowest interior part of the house. Or for those that need to seek shelter somewhere else, they leave their house and they might be driving through flooded roads. Then, of course, flash flood warning, we tell people to move to higher ground. So having the two in effect at the same time, it can kind of confuse people as to, okay, what do I do to stay safe? And it could delay their decision making, then get them into trouble. So there's a lot of training being done on this, and trying to fine tune how can we convey the right messaging to not confuse people and to keep them safe. So these just a couple of notes from the CLC course, but just wanted to share them here. So one thing, of course, is if you're expecting severe weather and tornadoes and flash floods, to begin, messaging for both before the event. Give equal attention to both, and be intentional of which one you order first or which one you believe is the bigger threat. And as was mentioned earlier during the staffing presentation, most of the time the hydro desk shouldn't also be, the severe radar. I've done them both during minor events, but it could definitely you can lose track easily if you're trying to pay attention to both threats at the same time. And flash flooding shouldn't be treated as a side threat. Oftentimes, there's less stigma with missing a flash flood event than there is with missing a tornado, but it is still, there's more flooding fatalities than there are tornado fatalities. The big El Reno tornado in 2013, there's 8 fatalities from tornado, but 13 from flash flooding. And so it's definitely not something to take lightly. So a couple of the tips that WDTD suggested, minimize overlapping warnings when you can. So be targeted with your tours, trim and update them frequently to, minimize having both warnings in effect at the same time. Be aware of conflicting call to actions. Maybe for flash flood warning, instead of move to higher ground, put, turn around, don't drown. There is work on, a specific call to action when you have this tornado flash flood warning scenario. And then again, actively dual message both threats during the events. you know, and it could also be based on public perception, depending on the area, and maybe people, are more afraid of tornadoes than they are flash flooding, or are more sensitive to flash floods than tornadoes. So it could influence their decision of which one they, take more seriously. So this is just a link to the CLC course. It's a great course that I recommend for anyone. And this is a graphic that they shared specifically for tornado and flash flood events. Minimize travel, stay away from flooded roads, move to storm shelter or interior rooms safe from flooding, and of course ditches are not safe because during heavy rainfalls. All right, moving on to, this is just a cool site that I came across during one of the poster sessions, because I never heard of it before, so I'm not sure who else has, but CoCoRaHS has this condition monitoring report that was launched as a pilot in 2013 in Carolinas, and it's a bunch of CoCoRaHS observers that report kind of the ground conditions, so from severely dry to severely wet. I think this would be really good for fire weather, rainfall impacts, just kind of get a feel for, again, ground truth for what's going on in the area. Not too many obs in our CWA, but enough to, give you an idea if you just want to, see what's going on locally. But I think this could be pretty useful. And it also shows the drought monitor overlaid, which, again, we haven't had drought problems in a while, but that can easily change. And this is just a zoomed in picture showing the severely wet and moderately wet. I think this is from a couple of weeks ago. We've had a very wet year, so. I wanted to bring this up. There's actually an entire panel dedicated to talking about SPC categories and social science. So I wanted to show a few points that came up, and there's some great presentations saved on the Google site. So a couple of the key things that came up multiple times was that there is confusion in the public based on, what slight risk means compared to marginal. Quite a few people, 76%, believe that slight is less threatening than a marginal risk. And I'll show another graph that kind of shows that, slight skew. And there's even greater confusion with the enhanced risk. People range that anywhere from a low risk to high risk. So people are not sure what exactly is being enhanced, where it falls on the scale. Sometimes a lot of people thought that it meant a worse risk than moderate. And so, just saying, there's a slight risk of severe weather might not give, all the information that the public or partners need as to what to expect. And just using colors alone, like showing the convective outlook map with just the colors, can also be confusing because, it's drilled in heads. People think that red is the worst color. Purple sometimes rate lower than that. Adding colors and words together is more intuitive. People responded more, able to rank them better when they match the two. So this graphic I showed is straight from SPC that we include on the back of our newsletter, I think once a year on the spring issue. And I think this is great for, like, if you say slight risk of severe weather, you could say this means scattered severe storms possible, or moderate risk means widespread severe storms likely. And so it kind of gives impact of, what you can expect based on the risk, rather than just, throwing word out there, and there's a lot of confusion based on it. And so I know they're using social science to try to work on fine tuning this. I think some broadcast media said that they do, okay, it's threat level 2 out of 5, or they try to use numbers to highlight the threat. And so this is just one of the images I want to share that showed you see the slight risk is ranked almost as pretty much around the same threat as marginal, but marginal spreads more into like the 50% chance for threat. But this enhanced one right here, it shows like a lot of confusion as to okay, what's the threat level from like a so-called enhanced risk. So this is just something I want to bring up, mostly for like DSS and social media perspective, that when you're using these terms, you might need to expand on it more, exactly what message you're trying to get across when you just say, okay, there's a slight risk of severe weather. Expanding on it can only help. Okay, I know I've shared this before in an email, and I think Breeze brought it up too, but I just want to share it again because I've used this site quite a lot just this past month, and it's a great resource. And I just want to list a few of the tools that are available on there if you haven't had a chance to check it out. So it has some things that that are available elsewhere. So you got the href and sref, the WPC Super Ensemble, NBM 1D viewer, but some of the great stuff also linked here is the situational awareness tables, which kind of give you historical context on the forecast, whether you're in the 10th percentile, whether it's extremely low historically or high, things like that. And then there's this weather and context tool from WPC that gives great climatological context to both NDFD forecast and NBM. And I think this thing is great that it shows, this is an example, it shows the GEF's violin plots, kind of giving you an idea of where the ensemble's spread is, but it also gives you, like it shows you, this is for precip, it gives you the NDFD forecast, WPC, NBM, plus the record. So it does the same thing for your max and min T's. So it can kind of give you an idea of, where your forecast lies in comparison to the record for the day. So it gives nice context as to, maybe messaging opportunities, or maybe you can use this to see the ensembles, where you want to go with your forecast. But again, there's a lot of information on this site, but and I definitely haven't explored it all, but Central Region has done a good job with this. So certainly recommend if anyone wants to mess around. This is a great tool to use. And I know Reed brought this up during the tropical workshop last year, but since it was shown again a couple of times at AMS, I just wanted to include a brief slide on it here. Honestly, mostly because of the impact sales has on flood events, because when you increase sales, it greatly improves the QPE bias, which in turn can increase the stats for your flash flood warnings. I know, like myself, I don't always think of, okay, there's a flooding threat, let's turn on sales. So it's something I always want to keep in mind myself. And then, of course, as we're aware, severe and tour stats also improve with sales, but there are caveats to that, which we'll probably talk about later, especially with the Ocean Ridge tornado. But overall, stats definitely improve with sales. And one of the last things I want to talk about was this is a really phenomenal presentation done by the Nashville WFO, talking about their overnight tornado event they had last March. Link to their presentations on Google site, but it was a really good presentation. They talked about not so much the environment, though there was another presentation for that, but more of the human factors, the DSS, lessons learned, things like that. So what happened with them was they had EF3 go through downtown Nashville. Middle, I think it was like at 1 o'clock in the morning. It was the 6th costliest tornado in U.S. history. And then they had EF4 through Cookeville, Tennessee, that intensified from EF0 to EF4 within 3 minutes. And 19 people died in total that night from the tornadoes. And, just briefly, they only had a marginal risk and effect for where that EF4 happened. And tornado watch wasn't issued till 11:20, probably, when most people were going to bed. As I mentioned, MESCA analysis was critical, especially collaborating with neighboring offices to get a handle on like what to expect in real time. And again, also important was collaborative messaging between, the broadcast media, EMs, things like that. We can't just do it all ourselves. And so I think they used NWS chat a lot for this event, especially like as things were unfolding in the evening before the tornadoes. And one of the best practices that they mentioned heavily was to communicate actions. Don't just say slight risk of tornadoes or, mention the forecast, but also include actions such as, be sure to keep your phone on while you sleep overnight or have your weather radio nearby. Things like that, also relevant for, our recent event. Messaging actions can, who knows, it definitely help, people prepare or keep safe on things that are notoriously dangerous. Because as Steve mentioned in a email, North Carolina leads the nation with 75% of all tornado fatalities occurring at night. And I think, nationally, nocturnal tornadoes are more deadly than daytime, just compared to like the percentage that they occur. And so it's definitely something that, communicating actions, can't hurt, trying to prepare people that there's a chance, be sure you're not caught unaware. But again, it was a great presentation from Nashville, but it also hit home based on, what happened recently. So again, some good stuff. And just a couple of last miscellaneous notes that weren't really worthy of one slide each. For DSS, there's a lot of presentations on that. Timing is one of the most important elements of a severe weather forecast for local decision makers and EMs. So especially for like day 1 or 2 briefings or forecast, things like that, timing is very important rather than just saying, okay, severe weather is expected today. Give a time frame, or we've had a lot of like time of arrival graphics in the past, things like that. Those are extremely helpful for them. There was one presentation on radar misconceptions by the public. And so a couple of things they mentioned was people infer that if you see red or orange on reflectivity, it means that there's lightning and strong winds. And another misconception is that if they're in the green, it means there's no lightning, which we know is not true because, stratiform lightning happens frequently. But again, that's one of the things that the public can, misinterpret from the radar. So it's just something to keep in mind. And I won't go into too much here, but there was multiple sessions in the AMS talking about the future in probabilistic forecasting, and related to facets, which is just providing actionable info at all stages of impact of weather forecasting. And then probabilistic hazard info, which is phi, kind of like probabilistic tornado warnings and things like that, kind of moving into the probabilistic field. And then, of course, warn on forecasts to try to bridge the gap between watch and warning. There's a lot of presentations on that too. So I downloaded a lot of those that I could, and they're available if you're interested. But just wanted to bring it here as a footnote because it does seem that that's where we're heading somewhere in the future down the line. But yeah, it's still work in progress. I think the hazardous test bed's doing a lot of work on that. And so that's it. Again, Google Sites has a lot more information than I can include in a short workshop presentation. So any questions?
Yeah, Vicky 3, thank you very much. That's great for sharing that and putting that together for us. And also, there was one other presentation you didn't mention on this. I was wondering if your poster is available on that site.
Yeah, I didn't include it here also because I talked a little bit about it in the SURF program update. But yeah, the copy of me, Mark, and Steve's poster is available on the Google Sites as well. So just talking about Lorenzo, which again, Mark's also shared a bunch during IWTs and stuff. So.
Hey, Vicky, this is Dave. I got a dumb question.
All right.
So if you're in the polygon, your phone will go off, correct?
If it's a tornado warning, I believe so, yes.
And is that based on where my phone is or where my house is?
Your phone.
Yeah, phone.
Okay. Told you it's a dumb question.
If it works correctly, because we had it where it was what was it, alarming in Columbus County, but the warning was up north of
Morehead.
Morehead City. So
Yeah, and I think flash flood warning, if it's considerable, it'll alert your phone too.
and I know that works. It worked back in Arkansas in the middle of the night. It wasn't appreciated. So
Hey, Vic, are they considering changing the wording for the severe weather outlooks? Was there discussion on that from slight?
It's not in the immediate future, but I know that SPC was part of the panel, and I think the main impetus for all this social science work is that that's where they're going eventually, but it's not happening this year or probably not even next year, but they want to find a way to make it more public friendly or to have less confusion.
yeah, Rachel, I know there was a SPC went out really early with this, and I know the folks who were working on the things for the hurricane program and stuff, they made comments that they weren't happy with some of the things with SPC, and we see what some of that confusion was. So, like Vicky said, we'll probably see a change in it.
Yeah, I think that would be
I don't know
great
when.
if they did.
Even if they're not going to change the wording, they've solicited feedback, and I don't remember if it came to me because I'm severe focal point or not, but just about the graphic itself that shows the 5 levels. And what I submitted was one passing comment that Victoria made, but I think it's one of the best, is slight is 2 out of 5, 2/5, because people, I think that way.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that graphic that we attach to almost everything when we show slight risk today will change. But I don't know if the wording itself will, because slight versus marginal, the confusion.
Maybe we can create some pre-made graphics that actually explain it instead of just say slight, because it does.
Well, the whole time Victoria was talking and showing that, especially the graph of confusion, I'm like, well, maybe we show those day ones less. Treat them as more internal and just try to highlight, the PD's under the gun more than the coast today with some kind of a graphic, and just not use the SPC terminology at all, because I don't really think it's for the general public. It's for us and storm chasers.